Okay, very good. I have the task now to walk you a little bit through the last 10 years of the Copernicus Emergency Management Service. And even though I'm coordinating the service here at the JRC, this is of course something and a work that couldn't be done without the help of many people. Not only within the JRC, within ECHO and DEFIS, but also with our service providers and of course also with our users. But I'll come back to that at the very end of my presentation. Now, when we look at the Emergency Management Service, we have to go even further back in time, not only 10 years, and Mauro mentioned it already. There are a couple of relevant developments that led to the Copernicus Emergency Management Service as it is today. And one is basically what we call the Baveno Manifesto. And this is basically was the first time, and this was in 1998, so more than 20 years ago. And indeed, it was just across the lake Lago Maggiore here, across the Ispra side of the JRC in Baveno, where a couple of visionaries, I would say, met, colleagues from the JRC, but also from other institutions, DLR, CNES, ESA, etc. And they really tried to establish and develop a vision of how Earth observation can be used and can support policy making. And as you can see in the document, actually on the title, Global Monitoring for Environmental Security, security was already part of this idea. Now, a lot of the ideas that were developed more than 20 years ago in this Baveno Manifesto are still valid today. And for those that have looked carefully at the background screen of Mauro, could see that this report was still in the back of his office. So that's also another evidence that this is still highly relevant for the Copernicus program. And in fact, it was the growing seed of what we know today as the Copernicus program. Now, this was obviously one important development, but for the Emergency Management Service, there were a couple of other developments also starting more than 10 years ago that are relevant. I've listed just a couple of key ones here. At the same time, like the Baveno Manifesto, for example, the European Commission established an expert group on forest fires to look at be able to look at how can we better manage forest fires. They were also at that time already a problem, and we know now they're in particular in the last years are increasing rapidly. So this was also the seed of what we know today as EFIS. Then we had a few years later, unfortunately, we had another tragic flood event, Central European floods in 2002. And those floods were really also a kind of a cornerstone for flood risk management at European level. Unfortunately, they were affecting large parts in Germany, in Poland, Czech Republic, Austria, Hungary. And as not only did the Floods Directive, for example, originate basically from that type of event, or the European Union Solidarity Fund, also systems like the European Flood Awareness Systems were really, the start of their development was really triggered through this event. Then a few years later, and already with a view to being able to establish a Earth observation program as part of space policy in Europe, a research project was started, Services and Applications for Emergency Response, SAFER, under the Framework Program 7. And that really is the foundation of what we know today of the on-demand mapping component of the Emergency Management Service. But in particular, I think this project actually also shows that right from the start, the Emergency Management Service, and we do it still today, is based on developments and research taking into account, in particular, European research institutions and research collaborations. So then, 10 years ago, as was already mentioned, in 2012, the Emergency Management Service was one of the first services to become operational as part of the Copernicus program. We started in April with the on-demand mapping part, and a couple of months later, we're able also to operationalize the European Flood Awareness System. And as you can see here in this slide, I mean, then with the years, excuse me, we added new components, the forest fire information systems, the European and global drought observatories. We expanded the flood early warning and monitoring component to the global level with GLOFAS. And then, of course, a latest addition was the fact that we added an exposure mapping component. Now, obviously, this doesn't mean that we are not doing service evolutions inside the already existing modules. So we continuously work on the improvement of these components. You will see that throughout the next 1.5 days. We linked, for example, the early warning and the rapid mapping activities to be able to even provide faster maps through the on-demand mapping triggered by early warning systems. We improved the usability of the risk and recovery mapping component by introducing a standard and flex component system. You will hear about a new innovation of using aerial data to complement the products that we are developing in the Emergency Management Service, or a new global flood monitoring product that enables a fully automatic flood monitoring at global scale. And there are, of course, many, many more that you'll hear about in today and also tomorrow. Now, this is how the Emergency Management Service looks like today. So as I said, we have three components, three major building blocks: the on-demand mapping with the rapid and risk and recovery mapping. And we have the early warning and monitoring, looking at floods, forest fires, and droughts, and the exposure mapping component with the population and buildup. Now, I thought let's look also a little bit first at what are the general objectives of the Emergency Management Service, and just to recall these. So we are really trying to support all actors involved in the management of natural and man-made disasters, so civil protection, but also hydrometeorological authorities, environmental authorities, etc., with complementary data and products through the Emergency Management Service. And I would like to highlight the fact of providing complementary information. There is, of course, a lot of activities in the field of disaster risk management already going on at national level, even at local level. And EMS, we're really trying to support the decision-making process in disaster risk management through providing this added value, this complementary information. We've addressed all phases of disaster risk management. So we are going really from the prevention side, mitigation side, to the preparedness and early warning, to immediate response, so rapid response mapping or monitoring of an event or a damage assessment, to the post-disaster phase. So really looking at assessing the recovery, reconstruction monitoring, or looking at an updated risk assessment. Now, let me walk you a little bit through in a bit more detail through the different components like they are today. I know probably most of you in the audience know already some elements of the Emergency Management Service. But I'm sure that even those that know the service already quite well will probably discover a couple of new elements. So let's start with the on-demand mapping component, which is really based on this rapid response component. So really providing rapid emergency response support through rapid maps that are really fast delivered, so within a few hours or maximum a couple of days. And they are mostly also based on Earth observation, whereas then in the risk and recovery mapping component, This is, as I said, is mostly used for risk assessments, for monitoring recovery after disaster. So there is not such a high time pressure to produce these maps. So we have typical delivery in a number of days, could be also several weeks, depending on really the complexity of the information and data to be produced. Also here, we typically use not only Earth observation data, but also other data, could be in situ or modeling data. Underpinned are those two elements by a constant validation of the products. And I should say this is actually not only the validation of the mapping component, but we've expanded this also to the other elements in the emergency management service. So really doing a quality checks and an analysis for service improvements. So here's how rapid mapping workflow works. We basically, once a disaster is occurring, an authorized user, these are in most cases civil protection authorities in member states, sends a request for a specific area of interest and a specific hazard. And here then comes the key role of our colleagues in DG ECHO. The Emergency Response Coordination Center funnels all these kind of requests and has a first evaluation on it before it's then handed further to the GRC or the service provider, and the service provider that then start working on producing these products. And you can see here a number of them. We see a damage assessment of the earthquake, the Amatrice earthquake in Italy already quite a few years ago, or of the blast in Beirut in the Lebanon also a couple of years ago, but also some more recent examples. Pakistan floods just a few months ago, actually not even a few weeks ago, or the La Palma, the volcano eruption in Spain. This was already mentioned, and I think it's worth highlighting it again because it was one of the highlight, let's say, emergency management service rapid mapping productions that we have done in the past years. You are probably all familiar with the eruption of the Cumbre Vieja volcano in La Palma, where we really supported the Spanish civil protection authorities with more than 64 products over 90 days, which is really a massive effort, including 126 maps. And you can see on the right-hand side that we were really able to monitor the growth of the lava extent, basically, and also to look at the buildings, the build-up that has been destroyed, which was quite valuable information, in particular when this process was still ongoing. Let's look at the risk and recovery component quickly. This is, as I said, is more, let's say, the component looking more at risk assessments, at recovery, so with less time pressure. But the workflow is very similar. We have an authorized user that can request information, either a standard product. So we have a wide range of really standard risk assessments that we can do, for example, a digital elevation model or maximum flood extent mappings as a post-event analysis. So there are quite a wide range of these standard products, but we've also, for very particular products, we are able to respond and try to adapt as much as we can, which is what we call the flex mode. And here, really, we often combine a lot of other information together from in situ data, from model data, etc. You see here two examples. Again, a typical example would be a basic European assets map for Germany that we had produced, or as I mentioned, in the aftermath of the La Palma volcano eruption, a digital elevation model after the lava flows, basically. Another couple of examples here. So we do also tsunami risk assessment, or we did a forest fire risk assessment here in southern Croatia, and something relatively recent also is here a very complex analysis, a multi-risk analysis of archaeological sites in Greece. That really tried to look at, are now used to improve emergency and evacuation plans really be better prepared for in case of a hazard around these archaeological sites. Let's move on and look at the early warning and monitoring component. And here really we selected or we have established early warning and monitoring system for the three most prominent natural hazards, not only in Europe, but worldwide, floods, forest fires, and droughts. The first component here is the flood early warning and monitoring component, which is composed of the two forecasting systems at European and global scale. And here we really try to anticipate, try to have a look at a bit of a medium range forecast, so a little bit longer than the typical 1 or 2 days, but really have a medium range look at possible large scale upcoming floods. And this is, of course, in particular relevant for transnational river basins like the Danube or like the Rhine, or also at the global level. We have also there are numerous very large scale transnational river basins where this type of large scale harmonized information is quite relevant. EFAS and GLOBAS typically combine a number of data sources. So we are really using satellite information, so land use, digital elevation maps, together with hydrological models and, of course, meteorological predictions that are needed to do the forecast, but also with in situ measurements. One of the new things you'll hear about this is also that we also have recently added here a fully automatic monitoring of floods at a global scale. So we are really trying to not only do predictions, but also try and be able to do a large scale monitoring of these floods using Sentinel-1 SAR imagery. And one advantage of this system, because it's fully automatic, is its high timeliness. We're really able to provide in more or less than 8 hours between the sensing of the image from the satellite to the product delivery. And we can combine this to really improve also the effectiveness of the activation requests of the rapid mapping component, for example. You see here in the center of the slides, the really enormous amount of flood extent in the Pakistan flood, which we could monitor with this new system, with this new global flood monitoring tool. And then we had additional small-scale activations of the rapid mapping for specific areas where of specific interest, where we then used also complementary data, optical data, or other SAR data to provide an even more dense monitoring of the flooded area. The second component, and this has been mentioned already by Mauro, is unfortunately becoming more and more important, are the European and global drought observatories. As we all know, this year drought has and will probably have in the future and even more so high impact on all different sectors of our economy and our society. And what we are trying to do with these observatories is really we are collecting a wide range of indicators, could be the standard precipitation index, could be soil moisture anomalies, vegetation anomalies, low flow indices, to combine them really to have a holistic and the best possible picture of a currently ongoing drought, but also using forecast information of a predicted drought. Now, because droughts are, in contrast to floods and forest fires, are more of a slow onset phenomena, right? And they're also having quite a widespread impact on a large variety of sectors, such as energy, such as transport, agriculture. We try to synthesize also the information of these systems in analytical reports to really be able to support decision and making when it comes to a drought. Now, the last early warning and monitoring component is related to monitoring and forecasting of forest fires through the European Forest Fire Information System. And here, EFIS is really built also around on the prediction side. So we try to use weather forecasts to predict fire danger risk. That's what you see here on the right-hand side. So really trying to note areas where there's a possibility or a very high risk that possible fire could be spreading very fast. And then on the bottom center picture, you see the monitoring using satellite images. And also here, EFIS provides a very continuous monitoring of forest fires throughout Europe. And it also enables more effective activations of the rapid mapping component by then going more into detail with a specific area of interest through the rapid mapping. Now, the last component, and let's say the new kid on the block, right, is the exposure mapping. And let me maybe say a few words before why we added this component. Now, you've seen beforehand we are monitoring quite a wide range of different hazards. But what most of our users, of course, need is not the hazard monitoring, but really the impact. So really how many people are affected, what infrastructure is being affected. And we need that in all components, from the on-demand mapping through the early warning and monitoring components. And this is why we decided to add this new exposure mapping component to the emergency management service to really have a harmonized and global scale information on build-up and population. And we do this with the global human settlement layer, which has been developed here at the JRC for quite a few years. And we're building on this experience and the knowledge that we have of the GHSL to add this exposure mapping component to the emergency management service. Now, I would also like to mention that the exposure mapping or the GHSL products are also really a prime example of creating synergies. Obviously, this type of information is not only important for the emergency management service, but is also relevant for a number of other Copernicus services, but also beyond Copernicus. And sustainable development goals, of course, or for European Green Deal, etc. So really, one thing that we're also trying to really achieve or have achieved, I think we will see that later on, is creating synergies, in particular with other Copernicus services, and we'll have a session on these synergies between the Copernicus services also later today. Now, just to come a little bit to the outreach and the impact of the service. Obviously, Copernicus is a user-driven program, and I think this is the key to its success so far. And of course, for the emergency management, this is of course also true for the emergency management service. And we're really putting in a big effort to reach out to the users, to listen to the users. We are having constant user workshops. Tom mentioned already a couple of them. We are collecting feedback on our maps. We are collecting feedback on all the products that we are sending on EFAS notifications, etc. So we are really putting in a very large effort to be as close to user needs as possible. And I think if we look back in the last 10 years, I think this is paying off. On the left-hand side, you see the number of rapid mapping activations on the top and on the risk and recovery activations on the bottom. What you can see is that over the years, we really have increased the number of activations. So really being able to enable users to tightly integrate this type of information in their risk management processes at national, regional, and local level. So we are now with the rapid mapping, we're around about 70 to 80 activations per year. For risk and recovery, after the redesign of the into flex and standards that we did a couple of years ago, you see that the effect of this user-driven evolution really has a big effect also on risk and recovery mapping activations, where we also have a record number last year. We have almost 500,000 visits of the EFIS website from almost 200 countries in 2021. We have more than 100 EFAS partners now, well beyond 100 EFAS partners, providing them with EFAS notifications on upcoming floods. So you see that really also the drought here in the center is really used to inform policy makers. So we are really having, I think, evidence that the emergency management service over the past 10 years has really been well integrated now into European disaster risk management. Of course, we're not only reaching out to our core users, but also to increasingly also into the public and the media. And you can see a couple of examples here. And of course, I mean, reaching out to the public and making the public aware about the emergency management service and what it does and what it provides at European level is of course also beneficial, not only for the EMS, but also for the Copernicus ecosystem, and of course, as such, for the entire EU space program and the EU and beyond. Now, so what's really next? Where are we heading next? Where are we heading next in the next 10 years? Now, Tom, Mauro, and also Olympia already mentioned this a little bit. Well, you'll find out in today's sessions, and also in particular, then also in tomorrow's session. So we'll show you the latest innovations today that we have already implemented. We'll listen to some user feedback, some use cases. We will have a look at research projects that are in the area of disaster risk management. Also here, these are important part of the evolution of the emergency management service. And then we'll have a glimpse into the future, in particular with some of the elements that we are already concretely working on and that are to be released even in the short or medium term. So stay tuned for this today and the coming days. And as a last thing, of course, after 10 years, I have to thank everybody, not only the audience here for the attention, but in particular, of course, colleagues at the JRC, at DG DEFIS, at ECHO, but most importantly, also our service providers. Obviously, the emergency management service cannot be done only by JRC, DEFIS, and ECHO alone. We rely on a wide range of service providers, of companies all throughout, and institutions all throughout Europe that help us implementing the service. So really a big thanks to you. And last but not least, a really big thanks also to all the users that have turned and shaped the emergency management service into what it is today. So I'll stop here. I'll thank you again for your attention, and I'll hand back to Tom, I would say.